Hello, Hayes. So I'm a pretty social person, but I struggle with dating because I have extreme social anxiety around meeting new people. The process of talking to someone new, setting up time to hang out, and then actually showing up for the date is incredibly stressful for me. And sometimes my social anxiety kicks in and I just bail, which is not how I want to treat other people. I've been single for a while now, and while I don't feel like my life is incomplete in any way, I'm interested in going through life with a partner. I think there's something beautiful about finding a person with whom to weather life's ups and downs. I've been working hard to build a life that I love. I spent much of my 20s working with therapists to reconnect with my feelings, but it feels like a difficult impasse to both honor my feelings and also recognize that my social anxiety may be overreacting or overfunctioning as I think about getting to know someone new. I want to listen to my body and tap into my feelings, but I think when I give my social anxiety too much space to grow, it ends up feeling more real and scary. I see a lot of dating advice that talks about knowing yourself and doing things you love, which all makes sense. But I'm at a loss for what dating can look like with social anxiety. I welcome your insights and perspective. Yours, fight or flight. This difference between when to give your anxiety space, like when to honor that feeling and do nothing versus when to push through it is top of mind for me all the time. Like maybe not in the same, maybe not, it's not always about anxiety for me, but when to listen to a feeling and allow myself to step back versus when to push through. I don't know. It's a topic that comes up a lot in my life. So I'm really excited to talk with you about it. I find it first so interesting that you are not so interesting. I think it's great that you recognize that you are a social person. You like being around other people. Maybe you're energized by time spent with people that you know and are comfortable with, but it's specifically the new people part that's scary. I think that's really important to remember as a way to boost your confidence, because all of the people that you currently are social with were new people to you at one point. There is a part of you that has been successful, even if uncomfortable at first, meeting new people. And I want you to remember that. I want you to remember who you are. I want you to remember this part of you that is capable of feeling, the part of you that's comfortable. What's the word I'm looking for? I want you to feel confident in the part of you that has been able to become comfortable with others. And anytime you're in a position where you have to meet someone new and you're like, how am I ever going to feel like myself? I want you just to remind yourself, I've done this before. There are people in my life with whom I feel at ease. I've done it once, I can do it again. So that's number one. So before I go much deeper, I want to remind you, as I've done before, that not everything I say in this episode, or really when I talk about anything at all, is going to necessarily apply to you. And if you're listening at any point and you feel like, oh, that seems like an oversimplification of how I feel, or that I don't know if that would work for me, or my therapist has told me something different, or et cetera, that's okay. I want you to take what is helpful or what is interesting or what is inspiring or what makes you think, and feel free to leave the rest. All of our brains work differently. All of us have different past experiences that come to play when we're talking about anxiety. Some of us might have OCD. I just want to remind you of that. I feel like it's an important thing to differentiate too when we're talking about overthinking and social anxiety and when to pay attention to our thoughts versus when to ignore them. I do think that my perspective is, I think a lot of what I say will work for a lot of people because I try not to give advice that is prescriptive and more just potentially another way to think about things. And still, what I say might not work for you. It might be at odds with how you function. And please keep that in mind while listening. Okay, onward. One thing that's coming up for me is how you know what it feels like to be anxious about doing something. And you know that feeling is uncomfortable and often makes you not want to go. It makes you withdraw. I think then we think the opposite of that. We think that wanting to go is going to feel easy, and that one day you'll just be able to snap your fingers and going on dates will be easy for you, or you'll feel more comfortable, and that's how you'll know it's a good thing. But I think it's also a reality for many people that anxiety and fear and overthinking, to a degree, might be present no matter what. And I think it can be helpful to kind of know that and to give yourself permission for those feelings to be present. I have felt really overwhelmed by thinking that every single decision in life or every single thing I do should either feel good and I should be sure of it, and that's how I'll know it's right, versus if I have any doubts or any discomfort, then it probably is a sign that I need to protect myself and not go through with the idea or not be friends with this person or not take on this opportunity. I think it's very realistic that any choice you make, there might be fear involved in the beginning, especially if you know about yourself, for example, that you feel nervous meeting new people and that maybe the executive functioning of meeting a new person is hard for you. I don't think that it might get easier over time the more you practice pushing through it, but it's okay to know that about yourself. It's okay to know this is a particularly hard thing for me. Fear and discomfort might always be a part of it, so I know to expect that. I know to expect that feeling, so when it's there, I don't actually need to overthink it because I know it's just kind of I know it's part of my jam. I, for example, get really, really nervous before any type of public speaking. Like, I remember when I went on CBS Mornings, I felt like I felt kind of sick to my stomach the morning of and the night before. But this is something I know about myself. I know that when I have to stand in front of a group of people, whether it's 20 people or 200 people, or if it's just on a camera, I know that I begin to feel really nervous before. Now, I also know that despite those nerves, I often still crush it. The nerves don't impact how I actually do in that moment. Now, there are absolutely things I can do and that I do try to do so that I can make the experience more comfortable for me. I don't believe that suffering is just because I'm prone to nerves and anxiety before public speaking. I don't think that I just have to suffer through it. However, I could, because I am more accepting of the fact that that is something that happens for me, I didn't spend the time before going on TV thinking, oh my God, I'm so nervous and I'm going to fucking blow it. I'm going to blow it. I'm going to blow it. I'm going to blow it. It was, I'm nervous. I wish that I didn't feel this way in my stomach, but I do. And I know that I'm going to be great. And I wonder what that could look like for you. If we go back to the fact that you are social, you do have people in your life, like I know that I get nervous and that it's really hard for me to follow through with these first plans, and I know that I'm capable of making meaningful relationships. What could it look like for you to accept that this discomfort is simply part of your journey of making new friends or of finding a person that you want to be with? Because to your point, there's nothing wrong with being single, and there's nothing wrong with choosing a life without a romantic partner. You want a partner though, and that's okay to want that. It's okay to want that, but you know that if you want that, you're gonna have to get through this. And that's maybe actually, you ask me like, how do I know the difference? Or maybe you didn't even explicitly ask me that. How do you know the difference between like when to honor your feelings and when to push through them? But it's something I'm thinking about as I'm answering this letter. One way that I decide whether I need to push through something or honor the feeling is like, what are my options? You don't need to go on every date that is available to you. You are allowed to have a weird feeling about somebody who asks you out, or a weird feeling about maybe somebody that you thought you were interested in and then you changed your mind. You're allowed to have weird feelings and be like, I'm actually not so down to do that anymore. You're allowed to say no then, and you're allowed to bail or cancel or whatever. But there is no way that you will get to the life you want, which is meeting somebody and finding a partner to spend your life with. There's no way you're going to get there if you also cancel every time you have an opportunity to meet somebody new. Now, maybe you'll fall in love with somebody you already know. Maybe that will happen and you actually will circumvent the experience of having to sit through this discomfort. But maybe you won't. And I don't think you want to take those odds. So part of what I would be thinking through is like, I know that the life I want involves being with somebody else. I want to share my life with a romantic partner. So I know that means I'm going to have to go on dates. You don't need to go on dates. There's so many ways you can approach going on dates. You don't need to do it like everybody else. And again, you don't need to go out with everybody, but you are going to have to go. So I think that's a helpful way to discern whether to honor the feelings or whether to honor the anxiety. You can't always honor the anxiety because then you're never going to get to the destination you want. You wrote that in your 20s, you spent a lot of time talking with therapists about honoring your feelings. And I do think that's great and important. What I think is just as important though, and what I feel like a lot of people miss is that honoring our feelings doesn't just mean letting them run the show. If you let your feelings run the show, you're never You're never going to grow. You're never going to get to where you want to be. Maybe not never. Maybe some people lead only based on their feelings, but I don't find feelings to always be very trustworthy. Feelings are important to accept and to sit with and to let them flow through you, but feelings are often fleeting, and thank God for that, right? Because so many feelings are not pleasant, but feelings are not the thing to make decisions with all the time. They cannot be in the driver's seat of your life, especially when you have dreams for yourself that you don't currently have. And I think that sometimes when we lean too much on, I need to honor my feelings, we enable ourselves to just stay put. And there's more you want for yourself. There would be nothing wrong if you were like, you know what? For my whole life, if you wrote to me and said, hey, my whole life I thought that I was supposed to be dating, but I've actually realized that I'm not interested in romantic partnership. I want to find community in other ways. I want to focus on friendship. I want to give back. I want to live in community. There's so many different ways that could mean. Then fine. I wouldn't say, hey, maybe it's your anxiety about falling in love. I wouldn't say that to you because you're making your own decisions, but you want to be in partnership. I don't think you can let your feelings run the show. I know how hard that is because feelings are often, for feeling-driven people, such as myself, feelings are often the more dominant, like my feelings are often louder when they're trying to get my attention than my intellect. And I don't even want to put them on opposite sides of the spectrum because I do think that they're very closely connected. But in order for your intellect probably isn't the right word, your right brain, in order for the part of you that thinks rationally and logically to be connected with your feelings, which I do think that the smartest, happiest, most successful people probably are able to do both, their feelings and their whatever the word is that I can't land on because all of them feel wrong. When you can live your life with both of those speaking, I just think that that's what I strive to. I know it's hard though, because my feelings often are like, Hayes, if you go to this, you're going to be uncomfortable. And why would you want to be uncomfortable? Wouldn't you rather feel cozy in your office? But a lot of what I want is on the other side of discomfort. Also, I'm realizing that I didn't say, it's really nerve-wracking to meet new people. I want to normalize that yes, the level of nerves you have might be labeled social anxiety or they might be more debilitating than others, but it can be scary meeting new people. It's scary to put yourself out there. It's scary to take a step towards something you really want. If you want to be in a relationship, you've labeled that as something that's important to you. It makes complete sense to me that you might feel nervous about doing it. Again, there are levels to this. There are levels to anxiety. There's general normal anxiety that every single person has. And then of course it can, kind of scale all the way up to a bigger, more complex challenge that's harder to treat and deal with. But it's normal. Maybe there are some people who say they don't get nervous meeting new people, but I think it's a normal feeling. And I certainly feel it. When I meet new people in groups, I want to feel comfortable. I want people to like me. I want people to think that I deserve to be there, or that I want them to understand why I'm there. I want to be digestible to people. I want all of these things. And of course, the things I want are often related to the things I'm insecure about. And now that I'm saying it, I'm wondering if part of you feels like your social anxiety is going to make you is going to be a reason why somebody might not like you. And maybe there's a fear in that. I'm a person who is socially anxious about dating. Is that going to make it hard for people to date me? Not just because it's literally challenging for me to arrive at the date, but are they going to be able to sniff that out of me? Are they going to find that to be an unattractive quality? And maybe some people might not find it an attractive quality. Some people might. It could be a turnoff to someone, and let's create space for that. Let's label that. If that's a fear, let's label it, because when we label it, I don't know, it becomes less scary and dominating in our mind. But other people, they're not going to give a shit. You know how many things I'm absolutely I have anxieties and pain about so many things. There are so many things in my life that impact the way I function, or that are just bigger issues than I initially let on. And I'm still loved. Brian still loves me. And, on my cruelest days to myself, I would say, oh, well, there's things he doesn't know. He doesn't know this about me. And one day he's going to find out who I really am. So that can still be present. It doesn't ever completely go away. But if I can be loved for the things I'm anxious about and the things that I'm sad about and the things that are hard for me, you can be loved for your social anxiety too. You can be loved for the full scope of who you are. You can be loved for the full scope of who you are. And while, yes, what you're dealing with right now is making it challenging for you to arrive at the date, I want you to know that, like, it's not going to be a barrier to you being lovable. The way you feel is not going to be a barrier to somebody bringing you into their life and to you being able to share the life with someone, to you being able to weather ups and downs with someone as you said that you want. That's really, really important. As I'm saying it, it's making me, I can even hear my own like speech kind of slowing down because I just feel that this is so important. If you've labeled this as like the biggest barrier in your life that you need to overcome, I think we can carry a lot of shame about what those barriers are. And I want you to know that it's okay. You're normal. It's okay. This is not going to be the end of the world for you. You very much do need to take steps and to push through the fear and like push through the fear. Like if what you want is to date, to fall in love, you're going to need to get yourself to go on dates. And you're going to need to create a bubble. You're going to need to create some safe way for you to function here. To talk a little bit about just like the logistical, what dating could look like, I think it's really useful that you know which steps in the process sort of trigger your fight or flight, trigger the I'm going to bail feeling. And it seems like it's the setup and then the going. I wonder if it could be useful for you to like close the time gap between talking to someone and then meeting them in person. Like maybe something you just try to do is not spend a lot of time talking to someone via text or whatever. You meet them and then you try to make a plan for like that week. Like maybe that's something that you can take the lead on in your dating life, because you know that the longer you wait between first contact to first date, the more likely you are to want to bail. Maybe that's one way that you can kind of take action. What else? If there are places that you feel more comfortable, like maybe this could be a terrible idea. This really could be a terrible idea. I have no idea. You tell me. What if you are comfortable in other social settings, for example, you're comfortable like going to pre-games, you're comfortable going to parties with friends, you're comfortable going to bars and talking to people. What if you organized first dates in social settings? So maybe if you're doing something with all your friends and some of your friends have partners or whatever, maybe you could invite somebody to come meet you for a drink, and then you two kind of peel away and go have a drink at the bar while the rest of your friends are there. Again, that could be a terrible idea, but I'm trying to think of ways that you can make this work for you. I think dating advice that says you should plan dates that are surrounding things you love, places you're comfortable, I do think that's great advice. I would keep doing that, even though that piece of advice hasn't like moved the needle for you right now. What else? Maybe there's also, I'm coming up with more things. Maybe there's also some like disappointment that you can express that this experience isn't easier for you. You're allowed to feel sad and disappointed that the experience of dating is not as carefree as it seems to be for other people. It's okay to say, you know what, I wish that this was easier for me. It's hard when you look around and you're like, why do all these other people seem to be having an easier time with this? What's wrong with me that it's so hard? I know other people have anxiety and yet they still show up on dates. What the fuck is wrong with me? Well, nothing's wrong with you. But before we get there, I think it's important for you to be able to say, I'm disappointed that this process is hard for me. Like, what would it look like for you to that's a way to honor your feelings, right? Honoring our feelings, again, doesn't just mean saying, oh, this is hard, so I'm going to tap it out. Honoring our feelings means saying, wow, this is really hard. I feel really uncomfortable with this, and that is a bummer. I wish it was different. I wish that I didn't feel this anxiety, but I do. And I know that this anxiety might be a part of my experience with dating. It's going to be though what makes you special. It's part of what makes you special. And I don't want to glorify or romanticize anxiety and pain and overthinking or mental illness. Like, I don't want to glorify or romanticize any of that. And it's an interesting line between like we are our pain versus we are not our pain. But I do think that this is a quirk about you. This is going to be a part of your story. When you do find someone that you want to spend your life with, your journey of dealing with this anxiety is going to be a part of it. And that is going to be beautiful because every part of your life is going to be beautiful. You will look back. All of these things are going to teach you something. They're going to matter. They're going to make meaning, and they're going to lead you to where you want to be, so long as you don't keep using the excuse of honoring my feelings as means of enabling yourself. I wish it was easier. I wish building the life we want was easier, but building the life you want often means doing things even when they're hard, even when you feel uncomfortable. Okay? And I think that what's going to be an interesting process for you is learning how to differentiate this person makes me uncomfortable versus this situation makes me uncomfortable. And that is really, really tricky. I have struggled with that a lot, not in my dating life because I've been with Brian for a really long time, but I've struggled with that in my professional life, in making some friendships. I often want, when I meet new people now, because I'm very particular about like who I bring into my life, if I've decided that I want to be your friend, I often like really want this person to want to be my friend. And sometimes that has made me look past things that I'm uncomfortable about. Like I probably go too hard in the ignore your feelings, push through. I probably go too hard in that direction, like push through this, push through this, push through this, that I ignore some of my gut feelings or some of my anxiety saying, oh, you're not comfortable with this person, so stop pushing it. I'm like, oh, well, they're really cool and other people like them. Or if it's professional, oh, this person could be really helpful for you, or they really like you and they really believe in you. Like that's where I've kind of gotten stuck. Like, oh, this person says they believe in you. They're interested in working with you. You should want to work with them then, because that means you're successful, or that means XYZ. And I ignore then whatever feeling I'm feeling. And that's something that I have to work through. I think you're going to have to work through that too as you start dating people. I think that one really helpful, I mentioned this a little bit with the event and how Brian got me to go. Brian encouraged me to go. Leaning on people in your life who love you and who know you is a really helpful way, I think, to discern between anxiety and feelings. Really helpful way to discern between whether you should push through a feeling or if you should honor it by staying back. And even as I'm saying that, I'm reminded that you can always honor your feelings even when you don't let them run the show. You can always honor, I'm uncomfortable right now, but I'm going to do this anyway. So you're always honoring your feelings. It's just whether you're letting them guide your decisions or whether you're just creating space for them to live in the background of the decisions. Talking with people that I love really helps orient me to make the right choice. Again, other people can't really make the choice for me, but sometimes talking it through with people I trust can help me come to the right choice myself. So I want to remind you to use the people in your life that you are already social with, that you already trust. And if some of those people aren't aware of how debilitating this anxiety has been for you in your dating life, tell them too. Tell them that. Ask for support. Ask for support. None of us are meant to do any of this stuff alone. So I'm so glad that you asked me, but I want you to ask them too. I posted this, I gave the second part of this episode, we're going to do a rapid fire Q&A, and a friend of mine and listener of the show who does have OCD, we were chatting a little bit about it, and I asked them to I asked if they had any advice that was specific to OCD that they felt was helpful, because they mentioned they talk about this a lot with their therapist, and I wanted to just tell you some of the things they sent me. So one, as a person with OCD, I find saying things out loud really helpful. When intrusive thoughts run around in your brain, they can be very isolating and distressing, but sometimes saying it out loud to yourself or to a trusted person can help put it into perspective and actually give it less power. Yes, and I'm going to go through more of their list, but what I loved so much is that so much of what they were saying they've discussed with their therapist, specific to OCD, is also just good advice in general. And that, I think, is what I thought that was really inspiring. And maybe even for a person with OCD or for a person who is labeling their thoughts as sometimes when you have a label or a diagnosis, you're an overthinker, even something like that. You think of yourself as crazy, or you think of yourself as damaged goods, but this is just good advice for anybody. Good advice for anybody. They also wrote that their therapist recommends framing the thought as, I'm having a feeling that, say the feeling, or I'm having a thought about blank, and framing it in that way can be helpful to determine whether the thought is worth listening to or if it's just a spiral. They also said to not shame yourself for having these thoughts. which I completely agree. Like, don't shame that's what it means to honor your feelings, I think. Honoring your feelings is not shaming yourself for them. It's just saying, oh, hello, feeling. Hello, feeling. Let's sit with you today. Let me label what you are. Let me talk about you with somebody else so that you can leave my body and not just haunt me inside. And then let's decide what we're going to do with you today, because every day might be different. And that's the thing. Like, I don't think that you always have to push through your feelings. You are allowed, just like some days you're allowed to take mental health days and call off work. Some Sundays you're allowed to do no household responsibilities and just chill the fuck out and do nothing. Sometimes you're allowed to say, I know that I'm canceling, or I know that I'm saying no to this date because I'm don't want to deal with my anxiety, but that's a choice I'm comfortable with making today. You're allowed to do that too. It doesn't always have to be go, 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 go. You're allowed to take a break. You don't always need to push yourself. So thank you to that person for sending us those thoughts. I think they're great. And I think that they apply, again, whether you have OCD or not. Is there anything else that I want to say to you specific to this letter? I think we'll cover more of it in the rapid fire. I guess last thing is that I think it's great that you don't want to bail on people. I agree that bailing because of your anxiety, well, yes, sometimes it's a real repercussion of having a mental health challenge. If it's a pattern, I think it's really good and smart and kind to look into that, because it doesn't make you feel good to bail on other people, and it also doesn't make other people feel good to be bailed on. So I hope something in here was helpful. I feel like I say that at the end of every episode. I hope something in here was helpful, but I do. I hope something in here was helpful. Thank you all for listening. If you have a letter that you want to send it to hellohayesbusiness@gmail.com. And now let's move on to the rapid fire. Quick request. If you listen to this show on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, or really if you listen to it anywhere and you like it, would you please consider going to rate it on one of those podcast platforms? It's a really helpful way to get the show for those podcast platforms to promote the show to new audiences and help the show grow, which is a goal of mine. It'll take you a minute. I hate asking you for things, but I appreciate it. Okay, on to the rapid fire questions. Thank you to everybody for sending them in on Instagram. All right, the first one, I wrote them down in a document so I didn't have to pull up my phone. I'm currently job searching, and I find myself unsure if I'm feeling that the position just isn't right for me, or if I'm unqualified, or is this my imposter syndrome brain talking? Really good question. I think that if you're in the position to be thinking carefully about what your next job is, I think it's so smart to think carefully about it, because our jobs really do play such a role in our mental health and how we feel. And oftentimes, I think in my own life, I guess I should say, and in the lives of my friends, sometimes we pick a new job because we think that new job is going to fix some problem in our life, or we think the new job is going to be the solution to something we're unsatisfied with in our current job. And it rarely works out so perfectly when we leave these questions unexamined. So maybe let me first by debunking the qualified thing. Like, it is okay if you're not perfectly qualified for a new job, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to be good at it. I'm kind of tired of the idea that like you must have all of the perfect qualifications in order to be successful. I don't know if I've ever been perfectly qualified for any job I've ever had. And when you're not perfectly qualified, that's what makes you hungry to learn and grow. How boring would it be if you only did things that you were perfectly qualified for? Now, of course, some qualifications do matter, and there are some fields where it matters more than others, such as in medicine or something. But you can learn anything you don't know. You learn on the job. So I think you can stop worrying about whether you're qualified or not. And if you have the opportunity for the job, if someone is presenting you with the opportunity, I think that that's a sign alone that you have what it takes. You haven't faked your way there, and even if people see things in you that you don't see yourself, or even if they believe certain things that you don't know if are 100% true, I don't think that means that you're unqualified. I would explore a little bit more about what it means for the position not being right for you. Because sometimes, again, when we've kind of put a job on a pedestal, like, oh, this new job, it's going to be more money and I'm going to be happier, better work-life balance, people are going to respect me. Sometimes we overlook other red flags. I know that in the last job I took before I went freelance, I had been in my previous job for 4 years and I was ready for something new. And I was at a point of frustration in that job that I really just wanted to leave. I really needed a change. And I overlooked so many red flags in the interviewing process of the job I ended up taking. I literally looked them in the face and was like, I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to ignore that because it's a lot more money. and it's more flexible, and it's my ticket out. Like those were the three things: more money, more flexibility, more responsibility, and my way out of the current life that I was in. I think maybe make a list, like make a list of why you're feeling that the position isn't right. And if all of your reasons are like, oh, because I don't know how to do this, or I'm nervous about that I'll fail, maybe take the job. I can't tell you what to do, but I think that it can be helpful to kind of identify all of the different feelings and thoughts that are happening. We think that we can do a good job keeping track of all of our thoughts and feelings in our head, but oftentimes we need to put them on paper and then discuss it with somebody else. I think imposter syndrome is just part of the game, I think. I don't think there's going to be a world in which you pick a job that you feel zero imposter syndrome for, unless, I shouldn't say there's no chance in the world. You absolutely could pick a job where you feel no imposter syndrome. There are plenty of amazing jobs there are plenty of ways of living life where imposter syndrome wouldn't be a part of the thing that pays you. And that honestly is a wonderful, great way to live. But there are certain careers, I think, and certain lifestyles that if you're going to choose to be a part of them, imposter syndrome might just simply be a piece of it. Again, I don't think you need to suffer through it, but it might just be like the social anxiety we're talking about. You say, oh, there's my imposter syndrome. Hello, nice to see you. I'm going to keep doing my stuff now. So that's one thing. Someone else. Next question. I'm ready to have a kid, but I'm scared of what will happen to my dreams of being a writer. Interesting. Oh, I think so many things about this. It's really exciting that you're ready to have a kid. And I think it makes sense that you'd be scared that you're choosing between being a mother, being a parent, and some dream coming true. And I do think that your dreams might change and the way that you achieve the dreams might change, but I don't think that you have to give up writing. What I do think, and this is maybe hard to hear, you might be scared of what being a mother will do to your dream of writing, because if you haven't already achieved your dream of being a writer, I'm not sure that whether you'd become a mother or not become a mother would do anything to make the dream come true or not come true. Like if you're already not writing and you're scared that you're not going to start writing once you have a kid, it's on you to start writing now. Because I've talked about this before, the only thing that's going to make you feel like a writer is if you start writing. That is the only guarantee. That's the only guarantee. And you're right, you will not have as much time readily available as you do now to write when you do have a child. But I don't think that having more time necessarily means that you write more. We all know that. We know sometimes that when you have all of the fucking time in the world, we still don't do the things we want to do. Maybe this will reassure you. I don't think I've told this story before. Maybe I have. In like 2 jobs ago, there was a man I worked with. He wasn't that much older, but he was older than me. So I sort of viewed him as like a wiser mentor, if you will. And he had a writing job at the company that I worked for, but he also was a fiction writer, a novelist. And during the time I knew him, he wrote like 2 different novels, and he had 4 kids, and he was going through a divorce. And I remember we talked a lot about writing, and he told me that he got more writing done as a parent than he ever did before he was a parent. And he described it as like the time that he had available suddenly became much more precious, and he was able to act on the time. Like he was able to make use of his free time more as a parent than he was not as a parent. And I know that having a dog is not the same thing as having a child, but I have found that to be true even as being a dog mom. I had more free time before I had Francis, and yet I have done more writing and made more progress on my writing project since having Francis. And I think it's partially because I make more, the time I have, like time feels more precious. I'm aware that I have less of it, so I act on it more. I don't know how that works, but I do think it works that way. I don't think you have to sacrifice your career as a writer not your career as a writer, your identity as a writer in order to be a mom. But there's nothing stopping you from writing now. Write about this fear. Like write about this fear you have. That can be your project 1 of becoming a writer, Writers are people who write. Writers are people who try to discover what's true and what's real through words. writers are people who have experiences and then try to understand those experiences more. And I don't think you need to be a parent in order to be a deep and meaningful writer, but I think that becoming a parent and exploring all your feelings about that will be great material for your writing. With more life experience, I don't know, you'll be able to bring that perspective into your work. And I think that that's awesome. So start now, though. Otherwise, you're just going to use this to torture yourself. You have a solution available to you. Write. Start writing. How do I know when to let go of a relationship that feels unfitting or if I'm being avoidant? So interesting, because staying in a relationship that's unfitting could be avoidant. I would ask myself, what feels not right about this? What are the things in this relationship that are making my spidey senses go off? And then I would try to compare that list of things to things I know about myself. And like, for example, if, let's say, the person that you're in a relationship with, like sometimes they want to hug you and you like kind of are like, no, I don't want to be touched. Well, that could be a sign in your head that, oh, maybe this relationship isn't right because I don't want to be touched by them. Sometimes they touch me and I like cringe. I would maybe check that with, oh, well, is that how I feel generally sometimes? Like, am I not the most physically affectionate person? Do I like my personal space? Am I someone who doesn't always want to be touched by people they love and friends and family? Oh, well, maybe this is just something that's true about me. And now I'm having to apply that into a romantic relationship. And there's a little bit of a learning curve. I would maybe do an exercise like that. I think it's really important to maybe talk about with other people too. Like, what are the things in this relationship that don't feel right? I know that there are people with relationship OCD, or that you can really overthink things that don't need to be overthought. And I think that you can aspire to feel comfortable in your relationship. Now, feeling comfortable in your relationship doesn't mean that that's going to be doubt free. I think doubts will always come up, both about the relationship you're in and about like the context of the relationship that you're in, your life, the world around you, and how your relationship plays into all of that. How do you know when to let go, though? Depending on how far into the relationship you are, I think you can talk about it. I think that if you are in a romantic relationship with someone, or in any relationship with someone, and there are actually not any relationship with someone, I don't think that in every type of relationship you have to bring up the things that you're unsatisfied with before you make a decision. I don't feel that way. Like, for example, in some friendships, I don't think you have to talk about everything. I think if you hang out with someone a couple times and you don't like the way you feel with them, you don't need to have a conversation with them about why you don't think you're a good match. But if you're like in a deep relationship with someone and you notice things that are making you not want to be in a relationship with them anymore, I think the less avoidant thing to do would be to bring them up, and to talk about it. And if there is a problem to be solved, try to solve the problem together before you make a decision to pull away. But if you don't feel good in a relationship with someone, moral of the story is you don't need to be in a relationship with that person. It's not avoidance to have standards for yourself, but it's up to you to realize whether these are realistic standards or if you're running from fears. Someone asked, how do I avoid adopting the anxieties of my parents? I mean, love you, Mom. I'm not sure we can avoid adopting all the anxieties of our parents, because I think in many ways, we are our parents. You are the children of both the people who birthed you and the people who raised you, which I know gets into like a nature nurture thing. But so there are ways that you will inherit dispositions or traits or behaviors, or like, this is why, we talk about how trauma is generational. But just because you inherit something or you're like predisposed for something doesn't mean that you can't break the cycle. I think you can break the cycle, and breaking the cycle begins with identifying what cycles you want to be broken. So if let's say your mom has certain anxieties that you've identified within her that you don't want to see yourself experience in the same way, I think you can identify them. And then when if you notice yourself doing them, you step back and you say, okay, I just noticed myself catastrophizing, for example. I'm going to take a step back now. I'm going to pause. What would it look like for me to engage with this topic or engage with this engage with this situation in a more grounded way? Do I need to take a break from it? Like, I think interfering in those types of ways. I also think there's something valuable maybe about not talking with your parents about things that trigger their anxiety while you are on the journey of trying to break a pattern yourself. So let's say you really want to take a big risk in your career, but your parents are very risk averse. I think it can be really hard as a grown child to realize, okay, my parents aren't going to be there. My parents don't have the tools, or they're not going to be there for me in the way that maybe I wish they were, but they can't. I know that my parent isn't going to react to this in the way that is most supportive to me right now, so I'm actually not going to loop them into my decision-making process, and I will talk to them about it after, once the decision's already made, and then I will give them space to process the decision themselves. And am I allowed to be sad that they couldn't be a part of that process with me because their anxiety about the topic would be too hard, would interfere with my process too much? Yes, you can be sad about that. But I think sometimes not inheriting our parents' stuff means creating boundaries. Like, that is what a boundary is to me. You realizing that your parents are amazing for so many things, and they are imperfect people, just like we are all imperfect people, and you don't need to go to them for everything. And if there are certain anxieties that your parent has and you don't want them to make an impact on your life, for right now, you might need to create a boundary between them. It doesn't mean shutting your parents out, but it means going to different people for different things. This is all like, Six Besties theory. It's about friendship, different friends for different purposes. You can expand that to everybody in your life. Some people in your life are not going to be able to support you in certain topics because of their own baggage they bring to the table. That's okay. You can still love your parent and not require their support in a certain area because they don't have the tools to give it to you in the way you need. It doesn't make them a lesser person or a bad person. It's just the reality of your relationship. What role does fear play when making a big life choice? It depends on the person, but fear is present in many of the choices I make. Like, fear is a feeling that I am very comfortable. I shouldn't say I'm comfortable with it. I'm extremely uncomfortable with fear, but fear is a feeling that I expect to be around. I think fear is often a protective feeling, but it's just one of the feelings that's always going to be there for me. You might not have fear, you might have something else. Fear is present in a lot of the big life choices I make, but I don't make big life choices alone. I make big life choices with somebody in my community, or I talk it through with them and I talk through the fear. That doesn't mean that somebody else is making the choice for me, but it means that I'm talking about my feelings with other people. And in doing that, the right path becomes clearer to me. There's probably some choices I've made that I didn't feel scared about. Like, did I feel scared when I moved to LA? I don't think I felt scared when I moved to LA, but that decision, it was a big life choice because it was a big risk, but it didn't feel permanent. So it didn't feel like that big of a deal. Honestly, I feel much more fear about deciding what we're going to do next. As Brian and I are trying to figure out where we move, that feels more like a big life choice because it also is so deeply connected to are we going to have kids? It's probably that's the big one. Where we move next, it feels connected to that decision, which is obviously a big life choice. Fear is absolutely plays a role there. What if we move somewhere where we're not happy? I didn't feel that so much about LA, interestingly. Fear is a part of it. So I think fear is always a part of it. I don't think fear is something to be scared of or fear. I don't think fear is a red flag. Fear is not a red flag, in my opinion. Next question is, when should you quiet your circle's guidance, like your inner circle, and when should you listen to your gut? Interesting. So the support of my inner circle often helps make my gut more clear. But maybe there's a difference between support and guidance. So if someone asks you, what do you think I should do? I think you should always be wary of telling them. I think that you should ask them questions to help them discover what they think they should do. Because none of us ever know what the best thing for someone else is. Only they do. And our job as people in their inner circle is to help support them, to figure it out themselves. And that's why it's really important that you surround yourself with people who can do that. Now, sometimes there are situations where you yourself are so far gone and you need someone to just help you snap back out of it and tell you exactly what you need to do. Like sometimes there are situations that warrant that. But in those situations, I'd say that you probably have lost your gut. You probably have not been acting on your gut. You probably have gotten yourself into a gigantic mess, and you need some help in the form of direct rules. But on the more day-to-day, like I think your inner circle is there to help you. It's there to help your gut instincts feel more clear. It's interesting. I'm thinking about it in like the context of like, let's say you're dating somebody and your inner circle does not like them, but you have a gut feeling that they're good. I still would probably, if everybody in my inner circle met somebody that I was dating and they all came to me with concerns, I would be questioning my gut. I would be questioning, is this gut or is this desperation? Do I desperately want this person to be right, so I'm willing to overlook all the things they're saying? But your inner circle needs to earn your trust, and trust can be broken, of course. But once you have a circle of people that you trust, I think I just see them more as a companion to my gut than in opposition to each other. The last rapid fire question I'll answer is, how do you sit with a past decision that turned out to be the wrong one, and it turns out your gut feeling was right? I know it can be really frustrating when something happens and you're like, I should have trusted myself. I should have listened to that feeling. And I think the hard truth is that that is the only way we learn. Like most lessons, I've only learned the hard way. The only way I know how to get better at listening to my gut is from the times that I ignored it. And I hope that the more times I have done that, the more experiences I've had where I didn't listen to my gut and I learned a lesson, that is how I will become better at trusting myself and trusting my intuition. So how to sit with it, I think you acknowledge, okay, there was one at-bat. There was one experience that I learned from. How am I going to apply this in the future? How am I going to remind myself of this in the future? It's reminding me a little bit of, Brian and I went out to dinner with a couple friend of ours on Friday night, and I got a cocktail at dinner. And when Brian and I were driving home, I was like, can you remind me? I don't like cocktails. Like, I don't like getting cocktails at dinner. I like making my own cocktails, or I like getting a cocktail at a cocktail bar specifically, but I don't like getting cocktails with dinner. I prefer getting wine. Can you remind me of that next time we're out with people and everyone's getting cocktails and I feel like I should get a cocktail? It's that's obviously a very low stakes example, but it's sort of like that. We learn. You would never, I don't think you're ever going to learn to trust your intuition if you experience what it feels like when you didn't trust it. I think you can be proud of yourself. I think you can be proud that you even have the ability to go back in time to remember what it felt like at first. I think a lot of people would block out that feeling and might block out the memory. And when I say you should be proud of yourself, I don't mean that for any of us who have blocked out memories. It's not like you are a weaker or lesser person. But I think if you're trying to figure out how to come to terms with it, it's like, wow, this is great that I'm still in touch with the way I felt before all of this went down. I remember how she felt, and I'm going to remember it next time. I know it's hard to learn lessons the hard way, though. I wish it was easier, but alas, it is not. All right, that is all for this week. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this show, please share it with somebody else. It's a great way to get, new people into our community. I love you all. I appreciate you, and I will see you next Tuesday. Bye.